Hey there, Heather Hurler, Chef Cutter Diamond, welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. And today we're going to be going hockey style as I am wearing my Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. Of course, the Leafs are falling flat as of this taping, March 17, 2026. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Hope you're enjoying responsibly. And no, I don't have anything green to wear for any occasion, so screw that. Anyhow, we are going to be looking at the top 10 best trades for a team in the NHL history. So, when I'm going to be talking about the top 10 best trades, I know there will be some that are the top 10 worst trades of all time, too. But we're going to do it from the benefit of the team who picked up the player. When I do the top 10 worst, it'll be from the perspective of the team that made the boo boo. So, anyhow, so this is a big boo. So, all right. So here we go. Number 10 is Brett Hall to the St. Louis Blues. So this was kind of a big move for Calgary to make. Brett Hall was a decent player with Calgary after coming over from Minnesota Duluth in the NCAA, but he seemed to be lazy. He was a good goal scorer, but he seemed to be lazy. So Calgary decided to trade him to St. Louis for some players like Steve Bozak, Rick Walmsley, and Rob Ramage. It actually worked out for the Flames. Like, this was a good trade on Calgary's part. Because, after all, I mean, and yeah, I think McCown also came over, but yeah. But the Blues, it actually worked out. Bozak was a decent two-way player. So was Rick Ramage. So Rob Ramage, but yeah. But St. Louis came big because, they got this goal scoring guy. Yeah, he had a lot more goals than assists. If you look at his numbers in 91 and 92, when he had over 70 goals each year, his assist total was terrible. However, what even was big was what the Blues a year later made a trade with Detroit, an unknown trade with Detroit, to get this guy named Adam Oates. And it worked. Hall and Oates. Like the Philadelphia duo, kiss on my list and all that. But yeah, Hall and Oates played their hearts out and got the Blues to do well. Although in 91 they choked to the Minnesota North Stars in the playoffs. In 92 they fell to, I think it was Detroit? No, Chicago. Nevertheless, they were perennial contenders. Hall would do well goal scoring and then got dealt away to Dallas and winning the cup in 1999 and, well, screwing the Blues. But yeah, the Blues did well with Brett Hall. Okay. Number 9 is Phil Esposito to the Boston Bruins. So as I said, we're going to do it from Boston's perspective. So the Chicago Blackhawks were the best team in 1967 in the regular season, but in the playoffs they fell to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Irked by the laziness of Phil Esposito, Chicago GM Tommy Ivan decided to trade him to Boston for a list of people like, what is it, Pitt Martin, Gilles Marat, and Jack Norris, I think it was, who didn't work out that well. Espo blossomed. And of course, this was kind of the same year Bobby Orr was coming in his own way. So Espo and Orr and the great Johnny the Chief Busick as captain, Jerry Cheevers, and a few other players too. He blossomed as a superstar. He would do what they call getting in the slot, which is like 10 feet in front of the goalie. He would basically own the slot with his powerful body and slap the puck into the net. After all, he did score 76 goals one season to break the record set by Bobby Hall. And then, of course, Espo's record was taken by Wayne Gretzky. But yeah, Espo was big. He got them to 2 Stanley Cup titles, and he was a Boston icon. I know that he was traded to the Rangers in 1975, and he nearly kiboshed the trade. But he was basically told that this would be a good thing, and the Rangers could build his competitive fires. It worked in a bit. Number 8 is Joe Thornton to the Sharks, 2005. So the Joe Thornton trade was big. Boston made Joe Thornton their number 1 draft pick in 1997. He was slowly creeping along, but the brain trust were like, no, you're not doing it right. Tired of his stuff and his underachieving, they decided to trade him after the start of, November 2005, once the season came back from the strike. They traded him to the San Jose Sharks for 3 players. I believe one, Brad Stewart and Michael Stern were 2 of them. I know that off the top of my head without cheating. But yeah, the Bruins traded their captain. It was like, what the fuck? But this was big because the Sharks had a good player. And also, Jonathan Chichu would be scoring goals like a Chichu train, 56 goals that year. And Thornton shocked a lot of people by becoming the first and I believe the only player in NHL history to win the league MVP, as in the Hart Trophy. Yeah, the as league MVP, being traded halfway through the season. He was traded in season, and he still was the MVP and the Art Russ winner for scorer, top scorer. So like yeah, and Thornton brought a lot of years for the Sharks and brought them some life, whereas Boston was a little bit listless and all of that. Number 7 is Jaromir Jagr to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I didn't know about this, but the Penguins allegedly made some kind of draft move in the 1990 NHL draft. I'm going to just take a look at this because I know that the 1990 NHL draft also had Calgary and New Jersey trade their first round picks, and it actually worked out for New Jersey because Martin Brodeur was they with the Calgary's pick they took Martin Brodeur, whereas the Flames would take Trevor Kidd. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, Yarmer Yager part of the trade thing. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was some kind of draft day swapping and all that. But yeah, the Penguins made a big move before draft day to get the number 5 pick, and they took Yarmer Yager. This was big because Yarmer Yager was a great player and all that, and you rarely draft someone from Czechoslovakia so early in the draft. I mean, after all, the Iron Curtain still wasn't open yet as much, and we didn't get the Czech Republic / Slovakia for a few more years. Yager were 68 because of the Prague uprising. Sorry, yeah, the uprising. But yeah, Yager doing his job, and he had one of the best rookie seasons around. Unfortunately, it would be topped by Sergei Fedorov and Ed Belfour's seasons. Ed Belfour was still technically a rookie, even though he played 22 games in other seasons. But yeah, it worked out. Yager helped the Penguins win 2 Stanley Cups in his first 2 years in the league. You can't make this shit up. But yeah, Yager moved. Number 6 is Ray Bourque being sent to the Avalanche in 2000. Now, this wasn't about Boston getting rid of him for any damn reason. Ray Bourque kind of saw the writing on the wall. Boston was not doing so hot. He wanted to go to a cup contender, and Boston's brain trust actually said maybe we should give you to a cup contender, even though that Bourque played his entire 20-plus season. I mean, 21 years with the Bruins. Actually, it was one of an astute trades of all time that brought Ray Bourque over to Boston in the first place, because in 1978, Boston sent goalie Ron Graham to the LA Kings for their first round pick in the 1979 draft, which ended up being the 8th pick, which ended up being the one that they took Ray Bourque. Bourque, was traded to Colorado. They put him to a cup contender and all that. They wanted him to be happy. The city of Boston actually didn't care if Bourque won the Stanley Cup with Colorado. They wanted him to be happy. So he was traded in 2000 and all that. I think Dave Vanderchuk went to Boston. The other way around. I can't remember who else went there. I would say Brian Ralston, but that's not right. But yeah, the Colorado trade. It didn't work out in 2000, but in 2001 it did. Thanks to Patrick Watt's heroics and Colorado coming together as a team, and Ray Bourque having a few good moments, including raising the Stanley Cup after Game 7 against the Devils. It was just amazing. He would retire, and it's weird how Colorado would decide to retire his number 77, even though he only played a year and a bit with them. Just saying. Number 5 is Doug Gilmour to my Maple Leafs, 1992. Doug Gilmour had some problems. Like Calgary's management were not really happy with him and all that. Gilmour held out and didn't play for the first half of the 92 season. Doug Riseborough of the Flames had to make a move, and it was it's the largest player deals in NHL history by number of players, with 10 players, 5 to the Leafs, 5 to the Flames. And it worked. Toronto was getting through the dark ages. After 1978, when they made the semifinals against Montreal, the team went through a lot of trouble. 79, they got swept by Montreal in the quarterfinals. 1980, Punch Imlach came back and bitched about Daryl Sittler, making Sittler lose his rag. 81, the Leafs came back through. I mean, Imlach was pretty much gone after his heart attacks. Well, then Sittler was welcomed back with open arms, and then they traded Sittler in '82. The Leafs were shit in '85, so much so they were the number one draft pick, which got Wendell Clark, which was great. The late '80s were not that great to the Leafs, and then by '91, the Leafs were the second worst team in the NHL. That would have given them the number 3 pick, but the Sharks, the expansion Sharks, getting the 2 pick. It was supposed to be Quebec, San Jose, Toronto, but stupid Toronto, they traded away that first round pick to the Devils for the one of a power play quarterback, which was Tom Kurvers. And guess who the number 3 pick was? Scotty freaking Niedermayer. Nevertheless, the Leafs turned it around. It didn't help the Leafs make the '92 playoffs, but '93 it did. Also helped with the trade of Grant Fuhr to Buffalo once Felix Potvin was strong in the goalie position for the Leafs for Dave Vanderchuk. It worked out great. Gilmore was a great player, 7 assists in one game against the North Stars. Doug Gilmore was huge. He even was Hart Trophy runner-up for MVP to Gretzky. But still, I mean, Gilmore was just that damn good. And the Leafs, it revitalized them. They went through that hellish playoff run in '93 that they were so close to the Stanley Cup Finals, losing Game 7 to the Kings in Toronto, and Gretzky kept the hat-trick. '94, the Leafs made another run, but the Canucks stopped them. Gilmore would soon be traded away to the Devils, but still, it worked out for Toronto. It did. Number 4 is Patty Waugh, my idol, to the Colorado Avalanche in 1985. The Avalanche were in their first season in Colorado. No, they were not an expansion team. They were a relocated team from Canada, of all places, from Quebec. Quebec City was a small market for an NHL team. The Nordiques were starting to get a little bit better after pulling up the Eric Lindros deal. They were tops in the Eastern Conference in that short '95 season, but fell to the Rangers in the first round. The writing was on the wall. Marcel Aubut sold the team to Comsat, and Colorado got their NHL team back after 13 years away as the Rockies moved to New Jersey. Colorado was doing decently and all that. Jocelyn Thibault was strong in that, so was Stéphane Fiset. It was an all Quebec backcourt, if you will. You know, the Quebec thing. Colorado got a lucky break after Patrick Roy was getting tired of Mario Tremblay, who let him stay in the net for 9 goals from the Detroit Red Wings on a Saturday night on Forum Ice, 11-1 final score. Wall was upset, vowed never to play for Montreal again, and Ray Shanahool, or known as Peanut, as the GM, had to do something about it. And he traded Wall to Colorado. Wall wanted to go to a West Coast team. I think Montreal knew they had to send him to a West Coast team because, after all, you don't want him playing in the same conference as you. So he went to Colorado for Jocelyn Thibault. Unfortunately, Thibault fell through the cracks, if you will. And Colorado surprised everyone by becoming the team that got to the conference finals against those pesky Red Wings, and Waugh getting revenge on Detroit by beating them in 6. Avalanche swept Florida for the Stanley Cup, and Waugh got the Stanley Cup. He also won the Stanley Cup for them in 2001, and Montreal was left to rue the day they got rid of Patrick Waugh. But after all, I mean, it was a fallout, and Mario Tremblay did start it. Fight me on that. Number 3 is Moose Messier to the New York Rangers. So Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky were a great 1-2 pairing and all that. Unfortunately, Eagles kind of clashed, although Messier stated that Gretzky went to LA, and we'll talk about that later. Anyway, Messier led Edmonton to the Stanley Cup in 1990, proving that they could win the Stanley Cup without Gretzky. Although they had some off-ice issues, like Grant Fuhr being suspended for a good portion of the first half of the 91 season because of cocaine use. But thankfully, though, he confessed at least. But yeah, Edmonton fell flat in the Stanley Cup playoffs to the Minnesota North Stars in the conference finals. And Messier didn't like his deal. Doug Messier, his father and agent, didn't like the deal either. So Messier kind of was ready to sit out. Edmonton didn't know what to do, so they decided to trade him to the New York Rangers for Bernie Nichols and Kitchener Stephen Rice. Stephen Rice just sucked. Nevertheless, Bernie Nichols was okay with Edmonton, then they traded him to Chicago. But nevertheless, the Rangers got Mark Messier. They looked good. They had a few former Oilers like Jeff Boogaboom and Adam Graves on that team too. And it worked out. Messier would become captain of the Rangers, helped them do well in '92, becoming the top team, winning the President's Trophy for best regular season record. Unfortunately, though, they fell flat to the Penguins thanks to that Ron Francis' 50-foot slap shot in Game 4 of the second round. But it worked out because Messier became captain, although he had a terrible 93 season, and allegedly he basically wanted Roger Nielsen out as coach and all that. They got Mike Keenan, who was really the work with Messier with tons of stuff. Messier told Keenan to lighten up with the playoffs and all that because their fatigue is going to screw them over. And lo and behold, they were the Stanley Cup champs, breaking a 54-year drought, which was the longest in NHL history until those pesky Leafs had just had to break it. It worked out for the Rangers. He did go to Vancouver in 1997. Kind of a dumb move, to say the least. And then 3 years later, he came back to the Rangers like it never happened. Number 2 is the Eric Lindros trade to the Flyers in 92. This was the best trade of all time because it wasn't necessarily Lindros going to Philadelphia that was good. It was the team that was trading him away that actually got on the good receiving end. I mean, every deal on this list, the team that dealt the player got bit. But this time, it's the other way around. It's the team that dealt him that got the better of the deal. Eric Lindros was anointed the number 1 pick. He was 6'4". He was tall and rugged. 1990 Memorial Cup champion is Oshawa against my Kitchener Rangers, of course, pissing me off. If I was 5 years old. I would not know that. Nevertheless, Lindros would refuse to play for the Nordiques, who got the number 1 pick in 1991. He said there was a lot of things. A lot of people said it was just a language barrier, but it was also because the Nordiques were run by idiots. Chimps. They're being run by chimps. Did you say chips or chimps? Chimps. Sorry. Never mind. So Lindros refused to play, so he went back to junior and all that. The Nordiques were under kind of pressure to get rid of Lindros or else he would go back to the draft. So they decided to make a trade. They were supposed to trade with the Rangers and get John Van Beesbrook, Tony Amonte, and Brian Newton, a few other players back as collateral, like Kovalev, I think, was allegedly the move. But it actually worked out for the Rangers not making those moves because, Van Beesbrook was flipped for Doug Lister. Kovalev was there. Who else? Someone was flipped. I think it was Doug Wade. Yeah, Doug Wade was flipped to Edmonton for McTavish. So it worked out. But the Nordiques traded him to Philadelphia. That was the deal that went through. And the Flyers gave up Peter Forsberg, Mike Ricci, Ron Hextall, and draft picks to Quebec. It worked out. Peter Forsberg would become a hero. He was the Calder Trophy winner as Rookie of the Year in 1995 for the Nords. And then once he went to Colorado, he was pretty good. He won a few cups despite missing the 2001 playoff run because of a ruptured spleen. Mike Ricci would be big for the Nordiques. He would then be flipped to San Jose for Olin Nolan, if memory serves me correctly. Ron Hextall played for 1 year for Quebec and then was traded to the Islanders in a deal that saw somebody go there. I can't remember. But then he got back to Philadelphia and played well. And draft picks, which actually worked out. And number 1, by far, the best NHL trade of all time is Gretzky to the LA Kings because this not only helped LA, it helped a certain part of the United States, to my chagrin, of course. So Wayne Gretzky was an Edmonton Oilers icon from the WHA days, 1979, to the NHL days, 1988, winning 4 Stanley Cups in a 5-year period. The others seemed unstoppable, and then Peter Pocklington, for some dumb reason, decided to get rid of Gretzky because he was flailing behind in financial terms. So, it was a good move to LA. Bruce McDowell made a pitch he should go to LA, and after all, Gretzky's future wife, Janet Jones, was from Hollywood, so basically they called Janet Jones a Jezebel. There were people that hated Peter Pocklington, burned him in effigy, and some burned Gretzky in effigy, too. But this trade would be big. The Kings would give up like a king's ransom, including hotshot Jimmy Carson, who would bitch about Northern Alberta so much he got traded to Detroit the next season. Martin Gelinas went to the Oilers. He was part of the kid line with Murphy and Graves. I would say Lamb, but no, with Graves and Murphy to help the Oilers win the Stanley Cup in 1990. Mike Krusheletsky went to LA, and so did Martin McSorley at Gretzky's behalf. Gretzky did have a chance to call off the trade, but he didn't. He said he was in too deep. He was crying in Edmonton, but happy in Los Angeles. A lot of people were pissed off, but it worked. LA changed their color scheme from purple and gold to black and white, kind of like the Raiders. And then the LA Kings sold out all the arenas, and that brought hockey in the southern U.S. to a standstill, and to praise that. Of course, taking off Canadian loyalists like yours truly. But yeah, it just basically opened the door for southern United States to get teams, either by expansion or by relocation. And fuck you, Gary Bettman. So that's just basically the best trades of all time. Of course, when I talk about the worst trades, I'll talk it from the other POV, the team that traded them away. Anyway, I'm jumped. I'm gonna do.